in a region marked by conflict. The landscape tells a story of persistent turmoil. While the world's attention is gripped by the devastation in Gaza, the West Bank is also in distress.
As you can see, no one dares to go to the land to pick the olives. We'd get shot.
Tensions between Israeli settlers and Palestinian residents has deepened, raising concern about the broader repercussions of this enduring land conflict.
Taking this war as an opportunity. Each day they become more aggressive and they take more and more of our land.
In this episode of Infocus, we take a real look into the story of these divided communities. Debates intensified over the Israeli settlement and the possibility of annexing even the entire region. So will the escalating situation add fuel to Israel's expanding drive for territory? The Palestinian village of Kusra, nestled in the heart of the West Bank, is scarred due to the long-standing harassment of locals by nearby settlers. Within the walls of its town hall, a powerful chronicle of the ongoing struggle unfolds. Among them, the latest and most harrowing, an attack on October the 11th, in which 6 villagers were brutally killed. It was just a few days after the war in Gaza began.
Mostly it was a horrible day. More than 40 settlers and 2 snipers came to attack us. Welcome.
Rabia O'Day, one of the survivors and eyewitnesses, recounts the horrifying ordeal.
This is the broken glasses. I was looking from here. The snipers were behind the trees. And they started pointing their weapons to us. Then the men from the town came to help us to leave the house. But because of that, they killed 4 of them.
What used to be their belongings is now ash. Even worse happened in the following days when an ambulance carrying martyrs tried to enter the town.
But they didn't allow for it to come here. Then they killed also 2 young men.
The Palestinian villagers say the Israeli army wasn't there to help.
The Israeli army came and take all the cameras because they don't want anyone to condemn them.
Traces of armed attacks are still visible outside the homes of defenseless residents, including some by the military.
A gas bomb.
So there'll be like tear gas rounds?
So
What do you have? I mean,
just we have a rocks, I told you, on stone. And if we throw it to him, they will maybe arrest us. You know, you see that? They see all the mountain.
Rabia says those who attacked her family come from some of the most aggressive and deadly settlements in the entire West Bank.
They're getting closer and closer. In the past, just one of them, but now look 1, 2, 3, 4.
Why do they park the bus there?
To live in it.
They live in the bus?
Yes. They start building a settlement by doing this.
The O'Day family is temporarily living in the center of the town with their damaged home under reconstruction. And after living amid the conflict for years, this is something they've never dealt with before.
I think because of the war, yes, there are a reason, and they become more aggressive.
It's getting worse. If the situation stays like this, yes, they will kill us too.
The Palestinians find themselves increasingly boxed in as settlements continue to expand.
You can see the entire northern and eastern region is now closed. It means we've been surrounded, isolated, and unable to escape. The goal is to separate the northern West Bank.
The mayor of Kusra says there is a struggle for sovereignty over their land and homes, which has recently intensified. They say main roads have been blocked off since the war started.
In the past, I was about 200 meters away from the settlers, but now they're only 20 meters away.
A villager who wishes to stay unnamed says the settlers are erecting a fence around newly seized areas, including his property.
I was like, how will I be able to pass through? They told me, you can talk to the officer at the checkpoint. I said, no, I won't. All I want is an open road.
The mayor explains the bureaucratic challenge in seeking to redress the complex history of land ownership.
The Israeli Coordination Office saw what the settlers did and said it's illegal. We should file a case. But in court, they demand papers we don't have. We don't have legal papers for this land since the era of the Turkish, British, Jordan, and now Israel. They want us all to immigrate, which means what's happening now in Gaza will also happen in the West Bank.
As the war in Gaza empowers radicals, the Palestinians in the West Bank feel strangled with no way out. Israeli settlements trace back to the Zionist movement starting in the late 19th century that sought to establish a Jewish state. These settlements led to the proposed UN partition plan in 1947 that allotted over half of Palestine to a Jewish state. The conflict centered on settlement reached a turning point after the Six-Day War broke out in 1967, when Israel captured the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip. The UN Security Council passed Resolution 242 calling for Israeli withdrawal from the occupied land as per the principle of land for peace, with the two sides barely able to agree on critical issues, including borders, refugees, and the status of Jerusalem. The peace process stalled repeatedly over the years. In 2016, UN Security Council Resolution 2334 called for an immediate stop to Israeli settlements in the occupied territories, stressing the need to push for a two-state solution. But undisputed lands captured during the war along the 1967 border, or the Green Line, more settlements were built.
And the Palestinians will keep living in...
To understand the dynamics of settlement expansion in the West Bank, we turn to Peace Now, a left-wing NGO in Israel that monitors settlers' activities.
If Israel, we do know that Israel is planning to build more Israeli settlement in this part of the city, okay? That's the problem we're having in East Jerusalem, but it's also increased further when you go to the West Bank. That was built here.
Maps provided by Peace Now demonstrate how new settlements are encroaching deeper into the Palestinians' neighborhood. It correlates with a report released by UN Human Rights Agency that some 700,000 Israeli citizens reside in East Jerusalem and the West Bank, up by nearly 200,000 in the past decade. They're living around 300 Israeli settlements and outposts.
And the number of the outposts that were built in the West Bank, it's all increased since the beginning of the war. Number that we cannot even compare to average year that we had before. At least in the beginning of the war, we see increase in the settlers' violence. The indicators showed us that the tension in the West Bank is growing.
Amidst the contentious debate, settlers themselves offer a contrasting narrative. To find out, we visit Gush Etzion, a cluster of Israeli settlements in the West Bank.
Today we are over 100,000 residents of this area. In 1967 there were 0. We're back, we've returned, we're growing, thriving. This is a 600-year-old tree and it's really the symbol of this area.
Everything that you can see, all these buildings are considered the West Bank.
It is a neighborhood that some settlers describe as quiet.
But I can't tell you at what point in those hills that's not true anymore.
Standing high, Rahul Moore, an American who chose to make a life here when in her 20s, showed me the full picture of the community. She regards the presence of Jews here as legitimate, mainly because borders and governmental status of this area, in her words, remain up in the air.
We see it as disputed. It was not a Palestinian country or state that owned the land and we came in and we took it. That's not what happened. Any incidents that have happened are teensy, tiny minority of the people who live here who are seen by the general settler population as criminals and are treated as criminals.
Even during wartime, we can still see busy construction sites along the way in Gush-Etzion, which residents here refuse to term as expansion.
What is the goal of the government in terms of the settlements? I can't speak for the government. It's the goal of the people who live here. The goal of the people who live here is to increase the amount of infrastructure for everybody who lives here. I think we're part of the solution, not the problem, and that's how we choose to live our life.
This viewpoint is, however, widely challenged by the international community. In the recent hearing at the United Nations highest court regarding the legality of Israel's occupation of Palestine, an unprecedented number of countries presented arguments. The majority contended that Israel is violating international law.
The force of the law must prevail over the unlawful use of force. We said years ago that we made a choice. Justice, not vengeance. But justice delayed is justice denied. And the Palestinian people have been denied justice for far too long.
Marking its absence in the oral proceedings, Israel denied the allegations and accused the tribunals of bias.
It's also illegal according to the Israeli law. You're not allowed to build on a private land. Obviously, it's illegal because if it's not your land, you're not allowed anyway. And you're not allowed, as I said before, if you didn't get the permission and the building permit and the housing construction plan and everything.
UN reported over 1,200 Palestinians had been displaced amid settler violence and faced access restrictions from October 7 till the end of 2023. But citing data from the Israeli security forces, the Gush-Etzion settlers claim there has been no significant increase in the volume of Jewish violence against Palestinians post-October the 7th.
And it's ironic that nobody comes out here to talk about, the Jews who are killed. A lot of people in this area truly believe that we have to go back and reestablish those communities for the safety and security, aside from the fact that we believe this is ours, it's our land.
Concerns about safety and future of their community are not unfounded. In the settlement of Ma'ale Shamron, the quest for normalcy by residents like Shlomit Halevi continues amidst fear and fences.
This mosque on 7th of October, 10 in the morning, 3.5 hours after the attack began, he started shouting in Arab, "Go up to Ma'ale Shamron, like they are going up Kfar Aza, and do to them what they do to the Jews."
Fortunately, nothing happened to Ma'ale Shamron on that day. But the escalation in violence against Hamas has heightened fears among settlers here about their safety and the future of their community.
No, I'm taking it for any case.
Shlomit chose to take security into her own hands.
I understand that, I have to take care of my family. I don't know what will happen. I don't know if I can shoot anyone. I don't know.
Her sentiment reflects a broader apprehension of what lies beyond the settlement's borders.
This is the watching guard that we built, okay? You see this?
Residents here have also formed an emergency neighborhood watch to fend off potential threats.
We are volunteers, of course, but like the big flashlights or cameras, some of them are donations from Jews around the world, and a small part of it is from the army. The army mostly gives the weapons to the emergency guards.
It's not hard to find those on the emergency neighborhood watch duty.
Yeah, he is with the long gun, and
I just wonder if you are serving in the army or you're just...
He's volunteering here in the emergency security guard.
Shlomit says she used to live in Tel Aviv with family as a child, but the relentless attacks and suicide bombings propelled her to seek a perceived safer haven, which is no longer the case.
So this is the industrial area. Mm-hmm. Most of the workers there were Palestinians. Everything was changed. We don't trust our neighbors, our Palestinian neighbors, which we had a relationship. I don't know if we will ever feel safe. I think the fences are a problem because I don't think anyone should live in fear, right?
Fears also linger in their Palestinian neighborhood, the town of Azon, sandwiched between 3 Israeli settlements, including Male Shamron. This Palestinian town, accused of posing a threat to the settlers, is said to have the biggest number of people imprisoned by Israeli authorities.
People got arrested, and not all of them are Hamas. Some are Fatah, some are politically independent. They are trying to involve the Palestinian Authority in this situation.
The villagers worry that October the 7th and the rising tensions would allow settlers more legitimacy to amass political support, while at the same time putting them under bigger risks and restrictions. The mayor says Israeli authorities have issued a series of military orders confiscating land around Azun to build roads, walls, and buffer zones around the settlements.
I mean, if it was for security reasons, then they should have built it on their side of the borders.
Sometimes when they were working in our land, the settlers came with the army to evacuate us. This year, the Israeli authorities did not even give us permission to enter our land at all.
During conversations, the Palestinians in West Bank expressed fear over some unsettling sights. Non-civilian drones hovering above, Israeli soldiers conducting operations, and armed Israeli civilians. This March, Israel's national security minister said 100,000 new gun licenses had been approved since October the 7th, and vowed to distribute more weapons for purported security reasons.
I just hope the people that make the decisions will be fair to everybody.
In March, Israel's government announced planning to seize another 10 square kilometers of Palestinian territory in the West Bank, described as the single largest land confiscation since the 1993 Oslo Accords. Israel's action sparked condemnation from parts of the Arab world and beyond.
Make the other side very angry. It's like poking the eye. And they're somewhat aggressive.
Left-wing activists say, despite cutting overall coalition funds under the impact of the continuing war, the government actually increased allocations for settlements designated for the year 2024.
And by doing and building the settlement, they're just increasing the tension, increasing the hate, and preventing the two-state solution.
Amid ongoing tensions and talks centered on the future of the Gaza Strip, movements calling for the return of settlers to Gaza have emerged. Their strong beliefs can be traced to museums that document the history 2 decades ago.
We came to Gush Katif as a family in 1986. We had the feeling, that we were like reviving the land.
Settlers like Lawrence poured their efforts into developing agriculture and infrastructure, showing a fervent dedication to establishing a Jewish presence in Gaza in the wake of the Six-Day War.
And we had that feeling that based on economic relation, that we could establish something that would be durable. Maybe not the ultimate peace that we're talking about, but something that we can live side by side and bring prosperity one to another.
But the optimism soon faded with the outbreak of the First and Second Intifada, when the then right-wing Prime Minister Ariel Sharon announced the disengagement plan to unilaterally withdraw and dismantle all settlements in the Gaza Strip. The settlers were shocked. They kept protesting and lobbying, but to no avail. In 2005, in less than a month, some 9,000 settlers from Gush Katif were evicted.
Everything was painful because this is, when you realize that a huge part of your life is not valued by people, and it's a life that you sacrificed a lot of things.
In the aftermath, while some moved to settlement in the West Bank, Lawrence said the majority of Gush Katif residents chose to relocate to communities within Israeli territory. But her trauma resurfaced as she witnessed the Hamas attack and the following devastation of the very place they once called home.
And I think it's only consequence of a lot of mistakes that were, along the years.
It has left this special group of people questioning if things could have gone differently.
There are some people that are talking about, being able to reestablish some communities in Gush Katif. For myself, I'm very skeptic about that. I don't want anymore to be confronted with the situation I was in. I just want to be in undisputed land.
In February, Israel's Channel 13 conducted a survey asking the Israeli public if it is in favor of establishing what it describes as renewed settlements in Gaza, with 51% of respondents answering no. Another poll conducted by Channel 12 a month earlier suggested 4 in 10 Israelis support reviving resettlements in Gaza. And at the start of the year, research published by Direct Polls showed significant support for resettling Gaza among Israel's right-wing and center-right political factions.
Most of them didn't pay attention during the last 14 years to the Palestinian issue, because they got what the rightists say, that there is no possibility to reach to agreement with the Palestinians. We are standing at the end of the conflict. If we are not going to take the decisions that we need to take, us and the Palestinians, nothing will happen. We'll continue to fight each other.
International efforts to broker a permanent ceasefire in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict remain stalled despite mounting pressure, as fears grow that the diplomatic gridlock between key international players could worsen the crisis further.
We need a two-state solution, and I disagree with the policies of the government of Israel, with the settlements and with a number of other initiatives that have undermined the two-state solution.
After months of deadlock, the UN Security Council finally passed a resolution demanding an immediate ceasefire in the latest conflict. In her latest report to member states of the world body, the UN Special Rapporteur on Palestine, Francesca Albanese, described Israel's actions in Gaza as ongoing genocide and the most severe stage of a long-lasting process of erasure of native Palestinians.
The colonial amnesia of the West has condoned Israel's colonial settler project. The world now sees the bitter fruit of the impunity afforded to Israel.
Expressing support for Palestine's full membership of the UN, China called for a more broad-based, more authoritative and more effective international peace conference to realize what's known as the two-state solution, which envisions the creation of a Palestine state alongside Israel.
The disaster reminds the world once again that the long occupation of the Palestinian territories is a fact that should not be ignored anymore, and that the long-cherished aspiration of the Palestinians for an independent state should not be evaded anymore.
The US and several European countries have imposed sanctions on some Israeli settlers in the West Bank over their alleged involvement in violent attacks against Palestinians. More measures are expected, but all these efforts appear to have little, if any, deterring effect.
The propaganda campaign has worked, but practically speaking, it's meant absolutely nothing. There have been absolutely no changes.
For those who call the West Bank settlements home, life in the days ahead seems uncertain.
After I came here, I tried to think how we can live together, how we can reduce the conflicts, if not solve it, try to do good to one each other. I really don't know.
If my government said, in order to respect the laws of the state and the world, you need to leave, I would respect the laws of my state and the world and I would leave. Just cleaning it out of Jews is immoral. I don't think that should be done.
Palestinians in the West Bank see it as another existential battle outside of Gaza.
ولا أنا بطلع من البيت وخشم أشملها.
And even if they ask, I will never go out.
This wall wasn't here, and we built this recently, hopefully to protect us from them. Just we have to hold our earth and our houses, because if we not go back to our house, they will steal all the neighborhood or occupy it.
From the people of Gaza who are enduring a humanitarian nightmare, the call is for an immediate ceasefire. But that requires collective agreement and decisive action from key stakeholders. Likewise, the future of Palestinian territory is subject to the diverse agendas of various interest groups.
Regardless of their stance, be it in favor of peace or not, their influence is unmistakably shaping the current landscape.